Thank you for joining us this evening for our Takeover Tuesday, a first for the Women's Rights Committee. First and foremost, I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. And if you just give me a moment, we'll go ahead and begin with that. We want to start today's event with the land acknowledgement. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought you to reside on the land and to seek to understand your place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in the past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. The land that I am on is the traditional land of the Kokopah people, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have been their stewards throughout the generations. May we honor their enduring presence on this land by committing ourselves to equity, human rights, and racial and social justice. Please take a moment to acknowledge the people and the lands you are currently occupying. If you don't know or not sure, please take a moment to research in the link that will be provided for you in the chat. Thank you. Moving on, as I mentioned earlier, this is a first for the Women's Rights Committee. We're very excited. Some of you may be aware, but CTA created a new committee, which is the CTA's Women's Rights Committee. I am Yuri Camacho, chair of this committee, and we're excited to have this event. And in honor of Women's History Month for the month of March, we are having two events, one today and one on March 23rd. So thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you'll join us again on the 23rd, as well as encouraging some of your friends to join us too. The Women's Rights Committee seeks to promote women's involvement and role in the labor movement, women's history, and women's rights. For today's Takeover Tuesday topic, we are going to be discussing CTA women balancing union leadership and family. And on that, let me introduce you to our wonderful panelists, beginning with first, Amalia.
Good evening, everybody. Amalia Ojeda here. I'm a fourth grade teacher in my 5th year at my current local and my 11th year total.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Chao Win, and I teach over in Chino Valley Unified School District. This is my 6th year where I'll be teaching 5th grade distance learning. It's been one wonderful ride.
Dr. Larisha Holmes. You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Hi, my name is Larisha Richardson Holmes. I am a special education teacher at Riverside Unified School District, and I am very excited and honored to be one of the panelists to present today.
And Lynette Henley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I loud enough? Because I'm on my phone, so it's on pretty low. I'm a 30-year veteran teacher. I've taught pre-K all the way through high school. I currently teach math and history middle school. Have been an active unionist since I was hired, and juggling elderly parents over my years, and we'll talk about that later. But yes, I'm excited to be here, and I just want to I don't want to say correct, but the Women's Rights Committee has existed for a long time. It has not been activated for many years. And so I'm glad to see that it was reactivated because I was a part of the original Women's Issues Committee, and we're advisory to the officers. And I look forward to this continued success of this committee. It's very much needed.
Thank you, Lynette, for that background on the history. I appreciate it. And all right, moving on to the first question. Why are you an educator? Amalia.
Due to the 2008 economy crash, I found myself without a full-time job as a drafter for architects and engineers. And so I found myself going back to school full-time. And that opportunity was amazing to be able to get a second chance at a second career, and found myself here in education. And it's been great.
Chow?
Well, I decided to become an educator very early on in life. It was around the sixth grade because I had a wonderful sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Cobb, and she was my student council advisor, and she was like at my wedding. You know, she's just always been a part of my life, and so I just thought of all the people in the world of what we could do, somebody you can admire and respect. Like it was teaching or education was the profession, so that's how I jumped in to being an educator.
Larisha?
When you ask this question, what I tend to think about, and of course, everyone is going to answer this question completely different. But what I will find from every educator is often rooted in the need for change, the need for change, the need for connectivity. But primarily, what we see is change. A lot of times, the kind of change that is created within us is doctors, lawyers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and even the president of the United States. Can you believe that? The president of the United States attended a public school. So every educator understands that being in a position of power starts with first being a good student. And so we were all students. We were not always the best, but we've learned to be the best and be that example. And I think second is when it comes to change is being that great student. I mean, that great teacher. And I think that is wonderful. Every job starts in the classroom. So all the jobs that I mentioned, the CEO, the president of the United States, the entrepreneur, they all start in the classroom. And so that's where the real magic happens. And it's wonderful. And that's why I decided to become a teacher, because every day I enter into that classroom, I feel that connectiveness. I feel that change. I feel that that magic happening. So that's my reason for becoming a teacher.
Lynette?
I didn't go into education for anything lofty. I finished school in December and moved back home, and my mother was a school teacher, and she says, well, what are you going to do now that January's here? I said, oh, I don't know. I'm going to look for a job. She says, well, congratulations, already found one for you. You're going to be a substitute teacher. So I subbed for about a year and a half, all grades. I just wanted to see everything. And I was good at it. I was had good classroom control. I was kind of a natural at it. And so I decided to get my multiple subject credential. I taught in the preschool program for about 3 years until I finished my credential. And I've been in education ever since, but I'm kind of get bored. So I was a primary teacher. I moved up to upper grades. I did that for a while. My primary teaching also was very beneficial for me because teaching fourth grade, I found kids that couldn't read or had gaps in their reading. And so as a primary teacher who that's all we do is teach reading, I was able to fill in some gaps. And so I did that. But education was not, I never even thought about becoming a teacher. But I love it, and I'm that kind of strict teacher. But I love my students, and I'll get them the next year to say, Ms. Henley, you were kind of mean. I said, was I mean? No, you were strict, but you always did it because you wanted the best for us. And that's what I hope I continue to bring to the profession.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on to the second question for our panelists. Why are you an activist? This time I'll go ahead and start with you, Lynette.
I think I've been an activist ever since I was a kid. If I saw something that I didn't think was right, I would say something. I was in trouble quite a bit because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And I had parents who supported me in my activism, and that was really good. And so it was just a natural progression for me to be an advocate for people that just don't have a voice often and don't feel comfortable using their voices. Um, when there was I just think back, I went to a Catholic high school, and you would think in a Catholic high school that there would be no racism, but we had AP classes, right? No minority students were put into the AP classes, so I questioned it. And they said, "Oh, you have to have a B or above in English and history." And I said, "Oh, you must not have checked my transcript, because I have A's in history, B in English. I think I qualify." So by the end of the day, all of a sudden, the minority students, and there was only a handful of us that qualified, were then put into the AP classes. So I question authority. I speak truth to power, and it's important that you do that, not just for yourself, because my speaking up allowed other students to be able to have that support. And that's just kind of how I've been all through my career in education.
Awesome. That's an amazing story. Thank you. Larisha.
I believe that it is. I know that we hear this all the time, the saying all the time, that it's important to be a voice to the voiceless. But I truly believe that. I believe that the feeling of being judged and the feeling of have to endure the unjust treatment is very important for individuals, for someone to speak up, because we do not want the cycle to continue to repeat itself. I believe that um, being an activist is just a part of who I am. It is not necessarily who I've chosen to be at times. It is definitely a part of who I am. So speaking up and being that voice is absolutely important to me. I have been placed in numerous situations where, at times I have been scared to speak. And at times I've even spoken when my voice has been shaking. And but I continue to believe that it is very important to be the voice for the voiceless. Thank you.
Okay. So my story about activism is going to sound a little funny, but if you ever watch Chinese martial arts drama where there's like a lot of storylines about being in the court and seeing the different class struggles between like the peons and then the kings and the queens and things like that, well, I watched a lot of that growing up with my family. And so I had this very like self-righteous of like, wait, that's right, or that's wrong, or how come it's this way? So I was often that person who would be like, hey, I have a question. Why is it this way? And then I would go around and ask, well, I'm just one person. Does anybody else feel this way? And then it turns out most of the time that when we see something wrong, if we question it and other people also hear it, then they go, wait, that is a little off. And then when we get into like, with numbers, things are able to change. And so sometimes I, attribute it to all of that drama watching that I did as a youngster. But then also the other part of that is just like, I just cared what was good for the bigger whole community. And in my curiosity, and then just like talking and being friendly and things like that, and asking others, hey, what can we do to change? I became a little bit of that activist. But it was mostly because it was like, oh, wait, there's something that we can change there.
Thank you. Amalia.
I found myself becoming an activist when I thought others were supposed to speak up for me and they didn't. So in my first year of teaching, I had a brand new principal, new admin altogether, and we thought we were all learning. So she kind of just decided, hey, we're going to take everybody's prep away. And I was like, wait, I thought that contract says we get a prep. And I didn't understand, and I asked questions like, can I get a copy of this? Where can you change this without paying us? You're supposed to pay for our prep. And being a first year teacher, you're like, who do I ask? So, you do your chain of command. You go with your site rep. And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, you've been here long enough. Let me go up to the next level. So I asked, somebody who was in my local, and they said, you can go to the union hall and ask them. And I was like, union hall, what is that? So of course, go to a general membership meeting or rep council, whatever they call it at your local. and just asking those questions and keep asking until you get somebody to respond to you. And finally, somebody said, yeah, you have a prep and you might actually get more time if they're taking it away from you. And, you know, what day did this start? Can you show us dates and times? And so we were able to, you know, take it through the chain of command, voice an opinion, voice a grievance. It didn't get resolved right away, you know, and we said for the next trimester, you gotta talk to the teachers. You can't just assume that it's okay to take our prep. So we just kept working it up, and eventually somebody said, well, you advocated for yourself because you knew how to read the contract. There's teachers who have been here who would have just been okay with it, and maybe a new administrator assumes that they just know everything and can go, you know, the way that they're going. And if you hadn't asked those questions, we'd all still be working without our prep. So we were able to get the back pay. We were able to get the consultation time. We were able to be heard and seen. And so I was surprised that somebody said, you know, go into that union work, continue it, because you're not going to be quiet. And we need you to speak up when you see something's wrong. So don't just sit back and assume, like Ms. Nguyen said, if something's just happening to you, let it happen in private, like speak up about it. So I was moving my way up through that union leadership because it wasn't being followed through. If you have a contract, follow that contract. That's why we have it. It's to protect our rights. And as a first year teacher, I knew my rights. I knew how to read that contract. And we got to teach more of our members to do the same.
Yes, absolutely. All right, moving on to our third question, which is, you know, has its part one and part two. We'll go to all four of our panelists again. First part, what are the obstacles to your activism, especially now that we're in this virtual space due to COVID and the pandemic and so forth? So we'll go ahead and begin with Amalia. Again, what are the obstacles that you seem to face to continue with your activism?
So given that I was asked to be on this panel, I had talked a lot about myself being a new mom with two under 2, and my daughter will turn 2 in April, which will be nice. I'm hoping we can actually have a celebration, you know, in person instead of, you know, online or just to a limited amount. But being an educator and being an activist is, you know, not just doing it for yourself, doing it for others. So what I found that I needed to overcome were some obstacles, like having that support system, having your village, whether it's, you know, local or globally, like, you know, our CTA family that we have. I'm a part of many groups because I've asked or because I threw myself into those positions. The other one is childcare. I mean, we were all told to go home and figure it out from home. And this assumption that everybody just has childcare waiting for them. I mean, your childcare providers need that time and space too, and they might have their own kids that they're watching after. They can't just drop everything for you. The other obstacle was like having, you know, support, if not just at home, if not just my village, but within my union. And I was able to turn to their officers within our leadership to ask them, hey, can you help me out here? I need you to have my back here, or can you step it up and I take on this new role? And our leaders within our local have been amazing to help me out during, you know, pregnancies and the leaves, and to take on those little roles, even if it's just for a couple months, but to have that support system is huge. The other obstacle is just organization. If you're not organized, there's no way you can master all these tasks. So I've got my Google, I've got my, you know, my Outlook, I've got Post-it notes on the wall. You got to find some way of staying organized so that you can overcome the obstacles. The other parts are just self-care and healthcare. If you don't take care of yourself, there is nobody who's going to get you. And yeah, there's a sub for your classroom, but there's no sub for you at home. There's no sub for you watching your own kids. There's no sub for cooking your meals. I mean, DoorDash and all those other things go great, but sometimes you still got to make your own meals. So self-care and healthcare. If we're not watching how we take care of our bodies are not going to work for us. So if I don't put myself as a priority, even in my own house, I'm not going to be able to be that go-to person in my home, in my community, or in my local. So those are the main ones that I found that if I don't overcome those, and I don't take myself as a priority, I can't do everything else.
I was like, preach, Amalia. Yes, yes, all of that. Okay, all of that. Because before, oh my gosh, I was like, well, I have a husband and there's like family and friends. But now, for the longest time, I was like, for 2 years, I thought to myself, even in this profession, which I think is like, pretty amazing. One, I thought, how am I going to be a mom and be a teacher? I mean, I was like, I see people doing it, but I don't know how they do it. It's like, so every time I see a mom or just, I'm like, you're amazing. Like, how do you do it? But all those different things that you mentioned about support system, networking, like, going out and letting people know I have this problem. There have been women generations before me. Somebody must have known how to take care of this issue, right? And then I think like reading a lot of the research, news articles, because now we're all like online, looking at just how other countries do childcare and a profession. Because before, people would say, oh, well, generations ago, I was able to handle my family and go to work. Well, yeah, it's because before women were the natural caretakers. And then all of a sudden, when you're saying, hey, I want you to also take care of this children and go to work, they're like, what? We should have more of something that, can balance the cost of childcare so that we can be like, all of these other people, like not other people, but all of these different things that we can do, like be a teacher, be a mom, be a sister, be a daughter, all of those roles that we take on. So definitely the obstacle of looking at what we have and saying, wait a minute, it could be different, and then organizing as a group and demanding it to be so. Because the other thing I wanted to mention was that before going into teaching, I had worked in other jobs, like as a contractor in like the film industry, and then also working in like public relations. And it's just, you have benefits here, but then if you look at it in other countries, like there's just more that we could be doing if we only demanded it. And I think the teachers union, some people are like, oh, teachers have it so easy. Look at, they have this and this and this. And I was like, yeah, it's because they fought for it. But there could be more that we could continue to fight for so that we can do such the important job as teaching. So, some of those obstacles is just like, yeah, how do you get organized? And then how do you demand more so that you can serve our greatest assets, which are our children?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was fighting with my mute button there for a moment. Larisha. And I see she might be having technical difficulties herself. We'll just go ahead and go on to Lynette, and if she comes back on, we'll go back to her. Thank you.
So could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So the first part of the question was, what are the obstacles to you continuing your activism?
During COVID, that was kind of the
Yeah,
frame?
specifically, yes.
Yeah, okay. I think that I've had, because I'm my site rep too. I mean, I'm the treasurer for my local, but I'm also the site rep. And I have to remind my I mean, I never have a problem because I just speak up for myself. I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to do that. So get over it. Okay. So, and pretty much they're like, oh, that's just Miss Henley. But everybody can't be me or expect that they're just going to walk away and leave me alone. But some of our younger teachers, I have had to teach them, don't tell the administrator all your business. Come to your union reps and say, this is a situation. How does my contract support or protect me around these issues? And as I've tried to kind of school them on that, it has helped, because one teacher thought she was at the beginning of the year when we knew we were not going back, and she has a second grader and I think a fourth grader, and how am I going to do that? And my husband is here, and she was going to take a leave. And I was, she had told the whole world and finally came to me. I said, first of all, you should have started with me. I said, because we can figure out a way for your day to look one way, but meet the requirements of the contract so that you are able to do your family and teach. So after I met with her and our principal, we were able to come up with a solution. And she says, Ms. Henley, you're right. You always tell us, come to you, we'll figure out a solution. If nothing else, teachers are very creative in interpreting our contract and in applying our contract, because most administrators don't know what's in the contract. So our voice is the strong voice. I think many teachers are not. I don't know who was saying it, doing self-care, and I just had to remind my administration and the district, this is not like me getting a break from home. I come to school, I got my 6.5 hours. I can, kind of be away from whatever crazy's at my house and then go back home. But when I've got my kids, my family, my elderly parents that I'm taking care of, all of that's in the same house is very stressful. So self-care is so, so important. So I think we have to advocate for not only what we're doing with our students, but for ourselves to ensure that we're healthy and ready to be able to teach every day.
Right on, yes. Larisha, same question. What are the obstacles for you in order to continue your activism, especially during this time of COVID-19 pandemic?
So many different levels, because over the past year, we have been through so much. I'm a mother of 5. So definitely, I definitely agree with everything that everyone said. I believe that self-care is very important. My children range from the age of 4 to 17. So it is definitely um, been a trying time for me, but it's also been a time where I've had to step back and truly realize what's important. I think this last year, just to kind of reference back to the question, what are the obstacles of your activism? And just to go back to the question, when we first entered into the pandemic, we've seen a lot of, we've seen the Black Lives Matter. That was, we've seen African Americans being killed on the TV. So that was a trying time where I had to explain to my children what was going on. So more often than not, within activism at times, it does appear at times that you're not probably seen or heard or even believed. And then sometimes it can appear as if that you're completely being discarded. But activism works. Activism works, and I believe that being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and even to be able to assist them is very important. I think that taking a step back and also having that network of support, to say, drop your nuggets on or drop your being able to talk to about it. Because definitely when the pandemic happened and I was a mother of 5 children sitting in a house with 5 children, and then this stuff going on, I was like, what is going on? We can't go anywhere. It was very trying for me. So I had to pray, I had to meditate, but I also had to, what I found very important, I had to protect my mental health. I think when this first happened and watching the killings happen on TV, of African Americans, and I have my younger boys I have young boys, and they're 4 and 5 right now, and I had to think. It scared me. I didn't even want to take them to daycare. I was like, oh my God, what is going to happen? And so I had to protect my mental health and realize what was important for me. And I think that is without debate very, very important to do. And also, I had to realize that a lot of times, even in the state that we're in, is that debating with others about what I know is true, I had to step back and realize the importance of that. And like I continue to state, mental health through all of this is extremely important. Self-care is extremely important. And sometimes you have to say no to everyone else and yes to me. Um, and so I think that us taking a step back, this has really opened up my eyes within the last year of what is truly important and what self-care really means. Thank you.
Thank you. Second part to that question is, how do you think being a woman impacts your activism? And I'll go ahead and start with Lynette.
I hate when I'm in a meeting and I come up with a great idea and then a man explains me. Same words, same concept, same, oh, this would be a great idea. And all of a sudden, Joe has the floor and wow, what a great idea. Pisses me off. Pisses me off. And so as women in those kinds of meetings, we have to say, well, Joe, that's great. But since Lynette brought it to the floor in the first place, let's go back to what she started with, because you have definitely glommed onto her concept. And we love that. But thank you, Lynette, for bringing it to the forefront, because we often allow men to take our words and make them theirs. So as an advocate, you just have to grab back your power. And I've had to do that. I served on the CTA board for 9 years, and often that would happen. And the women, we just had to come back and say, yeah, well, Lynette said this, or Mignon said this, and move it forward like that. Because men will take your words because I won't say they're not smart enough, but they're not there when we are. We get there, I think, way faster often on a concept or an advocacy of something. And then when they catch up, they want to take our words and make them theirs and make them like they're the ones that came up with it. So I think we have to support each other that way. I think as an advocate, women are discounted. Like, oh, you don't really get it. And that is another one that pisses me off. But I think as women, because you look at the women, a lot of women who are brilliant will step back and let a man take the forefront. And we have to just let our sisters know, we're here for you. We're with you. You don't have to step back. You're going to always continue to step forward. And so as an advocate, as a woman in the organization, I've had to push people to say, no, we got you. We were right here with you. And so, and they might be shaking in their high heels, but they're ready to go. And we just have to make sure that we're there to support them. So I think women you don't always have to be the advocate. You don't always have to be the person out front. But when you see someone struggling as a woman that has great concepts and great things to do, be there for her. Be that voice in her ear saying, you got this. We're here with you. And make sure that you keep pushing other women forward, because there's going to be a time when you're going to want to sit down. You're going to want to, just take a step back. And if you haven't groomed other people to take your place, who's going to be there? Who's going to fill in the gap? And so I think as advocates, we not only, you hear this in union business all the time. Who are you training to take your place? Who are you training to take your place? And that's not just getting them there, but it's giving them the confidence, the words, the resources, the connections, the networking that you have, so that when you walk away, those people that were your network become your sisters with network too. I think that's it.
Thank you. Dorisha.
Oh, wow. She said a mouthful. So I'm going to definitely agree with everything that she stated. I believe that as women, we should be one of our biggest supporters to one another. I believe that, at a lot of times when we're sitting in rooms, our voices are silent, but we have to be the voice in that room with another woman and say, wait a minute, Johnny, she said that first. And so, or that was her idea, maybe not in the same, in that.
It appears we're having technical issues. I'm not sure if that's just on my end. Um, my apologies for that. That's the space we're in, right, ladies and gentlemen? Let's see.
She's buffering. You can see
Yes.
she's buffering.
Maybe our staff support can put her on mute for the time being, and we'll get back to her so she can finish that thought. Absolutely. Sean, we'll move on to you again. The question is, how you think being a woman impacts your activism?
Thank you, Lynette, for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, yes, what Miss Henley said. But on top of that too, it's sometimes I feel like it's the ageism, because I just like will look really young till I don't know when I'm 40 or 50 or something. It's just being petite, and then coming into a room and feeling like you have to really like present yourself in a certain way to be seen or be heard. And then the other thing is also being like just a Asian woman. You know, you see me, you don't know what ethnicity I am, but you see like, oh, an Asian woman, you're like, whoa, she's got something to say. Or, you know, like, oh, does that take you aback or something? You know, because we all have thoughts, but it's just, I think definitely just what Ms. Henley said of just, I just said that. And but you're like steaming inside because you're like, I gotta be polite, but that's really just making me boil. And so sometimes knowing that on the back end before walking into the room, having all those conversations before you come in, so that it's not, you know, like you get to be the first person to either say something or be strategic about how that message comes out. So it's not like somebody says it and you're just like that. So
No, thank you. Amalia?
Often I find myself looking to whoever has done something bigger than me as a way to self-advocate for myself. Okay, if they can do it, I can do it too. And then once I feel confident that I've got it in my control, I make sure I check in with others. Like, hey, is this still happening? Can we move this forward? What would you like to see? I don't want to just advocate for me. I know I can probably check 1 or 2 boxes if you're looking at the big picture, but I've got to see where my veteran teachers are at compared to my new teachers when we're advocating for each other, and see what obstacles they've overcome, or is this something that's just getting ignored, and then go back and reintroduce it. And I've seen that you can't just advocate for yourself in your own bubble or your own box. You've got to step out of your box and make sure you advocate for everybody. So I often recall seeing Ms. Henley at State Council, and she doesn't shy around, you know, making sure she's heard. It doesn't matter if she's at the microphone. She will run to that microphone and make sure she's next in line and state her piece again. And we've all heard and seen it. Somebody will say that same thing and it's like, yeah, I said that, but I wasn't heard. So we'll step back up to that microphone every time if we need to and self-advocate. The other thing I often hear, just like I'm echoing Ms. Henley, you've got to have your support system, but also look into the future. What is that next person that can do your job or other jobs so that you're not having to do it all for yourself? And I find myself like, yeah, you can do it all, but who's going to be there when you're out of that position? It's going to keep going. This union and the activism doesn't stop or start with you. It's an ongoing, it's flow. So you need to find somebody who's going to flow with you or continue pushing that current. And I often find myself saying, oh, I'm never going to find a replacement. And the reality is, whoever your biggest advocate or doubter or critic, tell them step up to the plate. You want to advocate for you? I can do it so much, but you got to tell me. And if you don't tell me and I don't hear you, I can't do it for us. It's not just me. So I've learned along the way that you've got to have that circle of support. The support, you also have to support them by making sure you're advocating. Don't just check your own box, check everybody else's. And if you can't, ask them to step up and help you check their box.
Next question before we open up. to the Q&A from the audience. Uh, the question is, what do you wish your male colleagues knew and how they can support you as women activists? Beginning with Amalia.
I found myself asking what the situation could be, and if I could have a support team. I usually tag, the person closest to me, which would be officers, family members, or even my own, brother-in-law. Ask him, as a guy, are you finding the same situation? Are we in the same bubble? Or are you just getting perks because you're a guy? And you don't have to deal with childcare. You don't have to deal with that, staying up till 2 a.m. kind of stuff. And oftentimes we'll have a general conversation where he's like, no, I do that, or I take on this role. And even though he might be the sole provider for his home, and he'll still take on those burdens. So I kind of always have him as a, somebody I can advocate for, as well as have him advocate for me, because we're not in the same boat, but we can still help each other row, and we're not gonna just give up. So I find that if I check in with my male colleagues and see where they're at, that I could help them. And if they don't want my help, that's cool, but I'm gonna go home and ask for their help, and they better be ready to step up to that plate.
Same question, Shao?
Yeah, I was like, oh man, I have to think about this one. I think what I'd like for my male colleagues to know sometimes is that sometimes understanding how certain men still think after you have a relationship and you get to know like who they are and their story and things like that. I'm like, sometimes you're the better person to deliver this message right now. And I know that sounds like, oh, well, I want to give the message. It's like, well, sometimes, you have to send certain people to send the message, because then it'll be heard, and then you build from that. And I think some men may be a little shocked. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah. Don't you see the way they talk to us in a room? Or do you see how like certain questions get directed to you? Or like, you got that email, you're not the chair. Like, I'm the chair and I didn't get that email, but because they see you in a certain way. But the thing is, you wouldn't know that unless you had a conversation with them. And so sometimes just sharing that's been my experience, and then, did you know that was my experience? And I'm like, oh, what? But it's that revelation, and just having them say, hey, sometimes like, can you send the message? But knowing that we're sending the message, and then being that voice for us too, so that we come in collectively until like more ideological changes occur.
Okay, I'll go ahead and repeat the question. Again, what do you wish your male colleagues knew and how they can support you as a women activist? Larisha.
Kind of piggybacking off of what you just stated, is to acknowledge that male privilege. I think that men must acknowledge that there is a privilege that is there. We're in some people may agree, and may not agree, but I still believe we're somewhat in a patriotic world. And also the next thing I think we need to do is show solidarity. We need to start including one another in the conversation, including one another. But I think one of the most important things is acknowledging that privilege, and then also showing solidarity.
Thank you. Lynette.
I think what everybody has said is that our male colleagues need to be more in concert with us, as opposed to not working with us. I've just really had the privilege of my male colleagues respecting my words. And at every site that I've been at, the guys have really you get it, you get me, you get what's going on. And I don't know if that's because I have brothers above and below that, I was kind of the girl that understood guys. I don't know if that's a way to put it. But so I've always had that. And then this year, I was at my school selected to be the teacher of the year. And guys that I never even thought cared about, me as an educator or me as a teacher were in the chat, just kind of shouting out in the meeting, yeah, you go, Miss Hindley. You've just been the best advocate for us. We don't know what we're going to do when you're not here. And these were the guy teachers. I was shocked because, not that I didn't talk to them, but I never heard that affirmation from them. And so what I found over the years is that males will pick certain women that they feel safe with. I guess I don't know if safe is the right word, but that they can go to and feel like they won't be judged or be thought less of. Because men, you have this crazy, like, I got to be up here and I can't show my weaknesses. But I had a teacher last year, his wife is going through an illness, and the dude was almost in tears, but he didn't know how to be able to take family leave to take care of his wife and all that. And I said, well, have you talked to the principal? He goes, I just don't feel comfortable talking to her about this. But I feel like you can hear me and you can understand. So knowing that they can be vulnerable with you is a good thing. I don't think all males feel like that. So I've had the privilege of having that opportunity or that experience as an advocate. I think that when you get males on your side as an advocate, as a spokesperson for your organization, for the bigger organization, you seem more powerful. Even though you're powerful in your own right, they're standing with you makes the bigger population who may not trust a woman in leadership to say, she's got this. We got to be behind her. We got to support her. And I'm from a local where most of our leadership, most of our presidents have been women, which is very, very unusual. When I first came in, it was mostly men. But then there was a turn, and we've had our first male president starting this year. In about 20 years, there have been women that of other locals where it's always a male president. And he may be a wackadoodle and the vice president's a woman who's really running the local. So, they have to trust us. They have to feel like they can reach out to us and that they can be vulnerable with us too. And I think that helps males who are in leadership or want to be supportive, more supportive.
Thank you. So this brings us now to the Q&A portion in regards to where they're coming from, our attendees, or even from the RSV form, in which all of you signed up in order to attend today's event. So the first question that came from the RSVP form is, what are some of the struggles union women leaders have encountered? I'll say that once more. What are some of the struggles union women leaders have encountered? Lynette.
I don't have kids, so I haven't had to deal with that. But I had elderly parents in my leadership years because my parents had us late. And I asked my mom, I said, what were y'all thinking? She said, we thought we were young. That's what we were thinking. So my parents had us. My mom had me at 35. She had my brother at 39 and my other 35, 37, and 39. So think of a mom that when you're 20, so you're 15 or so, your mom is like the oldest mom there. And my dad was like 9 years older than her. I was like, what were y'all thinking? But I say that to say that so now many of our teachers are having kids later in life, and they, trying to juggle childcare. So we had to, make sure we had childcare covered. But then as you get older, your elderly parents that you're responsible for, getting them to doctor's appointments, making sure their medication's right. Even if you have support for them during the day, are they not trying to kill your parents? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? So that's something that people don't think about. They think about teachers dealing with young kids, but not with elderly parents or elder care as an advocate and as a leader. And so when you got to go to state council and you got to figure out elder care, that's almost harder than figuring out child care. And that's kind of an obstacle, I think, that teachers, leaders have to think about. And also when you're at your site, when a teacher needs to leave for whatever reason, they kind of understand when it's childcare. But if an elderly parent is ill or has to go to the hospital or something's happened, they kind of look at you, well, can't somebody else go handle that? No, I'm the one that has to handle that. So those are the two ends I think that we struggle with, of the early years of being, childcare, and then the later years of dealing with elder care. And sometimes they're not even your parents; they're just some elderly person that you help take care of. And people kind of look at you strange when you say, "I got to go deal with this person," when they're elderly, and you have to leave or go handle that. So those are I think, the struggles that I think we have to deal with. As leaders, that those are kind of obstacles. And oh, you have young kids, you can't, you shouldn't take on that leadership role. Or your parents are elderly, are you sure you can be gone for a week? You get it on both ends. Don't tell me my business. I know what I can do, and I know how I can get it handled. And if I need, so I didn't ask for your advice, and I'm not asking for your opinion. I think I've got this handled. So those are kind of the things that you hear people tell you, oh, you can't do that right now. What will your kids do? Or you're newlywed, what will your husband or wife say where you're gone all this time? Don't worry about my business, because I've got it handled. So that's it.
Thank you for all of that. Larisha, same question. I'll go ahead and repeat it. What are some of the struggles union women leaders have encountered?
Definitely to piggyback off of what Lynette said, as a mother of 5 children, I think that it's very important to have that work-life balance. And then I do get those questions. You have 5 kids. How are you going to handle it? How are you going to make time for it? How are you going to do it? And one thing I have to, just one of my main responses to them is, it's important to me, so it'll get done. And so because they hear that response, there's no more questions. And so I think that it's definitely a balance. It's definitely really considering that self-care option and really taking care of yourself. And really knowing your limitations, because at times we do pick up things and saying, oh, I can do it. We really think we can. And so really knowing your limitations and understanding your limitations, especially as a woman, because we carry so many different labels. And even as a teacher, we carry so many different labels and so many different titles. And so I think that it's very important to really have that work-life balance.
Thank you. Chow, same question.
So I was kind of giggling in the background, but I just love Miss Henley's response and Dr. Holmes Richardson. Like, I'm writing these down. So it's like, don't worry about my business. It's like, I was just gonna say that phrase. Because everybody wants to tell you, like, this is just what I really think is good, and I want to share with you. And I'm like, okay, well, so I'm gonna remember that phrase. And the thing I think that was really useful yesterday, there was a webinar, and Dr. Shirley Weber, who is our Secretary of State, was on. And she was talking to the first partner, and the question was sort of like, how do you balance all of these different things that you do? And I thought that what she had shared about, I wanted to see my children or my grandchildren, like I wanted to have them in the room so they could see what I do. And so when thinking about, this is an obstacle, it could be, but then at the same time, it's such an opportunity, because my parents were not in a union. I saw them, but I did see them organized within groups within our family as to like, how do we deal with problems? And I was at the table listening, or just kind of like around. So I think that, and Ms. Henley, I'm like 37 and I just had my first child. So I'm like, you're crazy parents. And so, but I think that having the experience, and always learning to have all these different skills, it's like, oh, well, that could be really difficult, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but it's going to help me somewhere along the line. And I think what Dr. Holmes Richardson mentioned about knowing your limits, I think is really useful too, because sometimes you just need to know you need to rest, and somebody will be there to do the work. And as Ms. Ojeda had mentioned earlier, was that, no one's going to replace you. So just with all of these different lessons, but definitely whatever that is important that should get done, if you keep showing up and developing those skills, it all comes back to what you can do for yourself, and then precipitate to what can be done for your children and the community. Because you take care of yourself, that's like one less person who's suffering.
Thank you. Very true. Amalia.
So as a new mom and mom as, a teacher and then union leader, I'm like, no, let somebody else do that. I was always told, you could do more, you could do more. And of course, my president would push me, or, somebody would say, oh, take on this task, or, oh, you know how to do this. And you've got to stop and say no sometimes. But when given the opportunity, it's kind of hard to pass those at the same time. So you want to juggle both. And what I found myself saying is, all right, if I have to do this and I'm gonna try it, I'm not gonna sit back and just say, oh, I have to leave my kid. I've got to still take care of my kid. Or, in Miss Henley's case, a grandparent, taking care of those. You had to figure it out in your schedule, find a way, and if not, find your replacement who is going to be able to back you up in that respects. But I was thrown into the position where, hey, you got to go to state council because somebody's not able to. All right, well, I'm like 7 months pregnant. I guess I'll be there. And then that was March. And then here comes June, and I'm back with the baby because, they're not able to go there. And they're like, wait, do you have a newborn here? I was like, I have to go where I have to go. And you know what? This kid can travel. Let's go. And I was surprised how many people were like, why are you back? I'm like, work has to get done. Yeah, we can have replacements, but it's not the same when you're taking on that responsibility. When you're taking on that leadership, you kind of just can't just back away because life happened. I'd rather bring my kids with me and show them the work ethic that we have that doesn't just stop or doesn't quit because it got hard. But we find a solution, we find a way, and we find ourselves, being able to go forward to do other things. And if I can show my kids right now, while they're still young and can't really backtalk, that they can do more, then I'm hoping that they're going to be able to pick up on those skills to say, oh, mom's working. I'm going to let her work, and maybe I'll get, a treat out of it, or maybe I'll get to do something. But it was such a good opportunity. I couldn't let go. And those are those things where I'm going to take advantage as long as they're, small and able to. But I know the moment they get an attitude or start walking away, I'm going to have to find a new way to do my work. Or maybe that's a great time to step back and let other people who we've trained to come up be their own advocates or be able to do their own body of work and not do it for them, but hopefully show them the way to do it.
Thank you. Last question for the event.
Yori,
Oh,
before you go
yes.
on, I just wanted to go back to say that many of our state council friends and all that, we've seen their kids grow up. And so we're the aunties and we're the uncles, and they're like, oh, there's Auntie Lynette. And they just like run off from their parents, and they'll be like, I'll see you later. I'm with Auntie Lynette, or I'm with Uncle so-and-so. And so it gives you a break that you didn't even know you needed. And the kids just love us. I mean, they just come to us. They feel safe with us. And we give you the break that you need. Just a quick story. My roommate from years ago was on state council, and she was going to get off because she had a baby. And she's like, I don't know, a single mom. How am I going to do this? I was like, I'm your roommate. Just bring the baby. So she would, I'd make sure we had the crib and all of that. And so her little network of us, we would just give her the, kind of state council was her time to sleep. So she would come in and she would sleep soundly. And we'd take care of Sydney, her little girl, for the weekend. And she would say on Sunday, she said, I am so, I've gotten some rest. I got some real sleep because I didn't have to worry about her. She was taken care of. And Sydney was the easiest kid. She would be with me. She would be with the network of other women that were there. And it gave Beverly a chance to still be an advocate and a state council rep, but also to have her child there. And bringing your kids to these things. I have a niece who's now an organizer for SEIU. I was like, I'm surprised you went into that work. She's like, how could I not? You drugged me to all those union meetings. What did you think I was going to do when I finished college? So I think bringing your kids around these advocates makes them advocates too early on. They see it in the best way of women speaking up, taking leadership, and organizing. We can organize anything, and those kids get those skills, but they also have a second family outside, that's their CTA family, their CTA auntie, their CTA uncle that get to be with them. And so you never lose that, and it's a second family, and that. And so I'm glad that you stepped up, and don't ever let life get in your way of bringing your children around other educators, because we love being with them and giving you a break and getting to know your children too. Thanks, Yuri.
No, thank you for sharing that, Lynette. Like, actually, being respectful of time, I think that's the perfect way to end today's event, because you really did, that story really did wrap it up. I mean, what it is to be a woman activist, the support group that's in place for her or can be put in place. Honestly, you just ended it perfectly for us. I can't think of a better story to end today's event. I want to thank all our panelists for being here today, sharing her story with us, and all of you who attended today's event. And I hope to see you at our next Takeover Tuesday on March 23rd. Thank you all.